Hello, everyone, and welcome to the TRG Talk Digital podcast. I'm your host, Rick Ivanovic, and today I'm joined by John Gardner, who's the founder and CEO of Optimum Hospitality. Hello, John.
Hi, Rick. How are you? Good to see you again.
Yes, good to see you too. Now, founder and CEO of Optimum Hospitality. I know you've been here for a while. So can you share a little bit about your journey of how you got started and ended up where you are today?
Started my career in the beginning?
Yeah.
My God, that's
okay, we're going to be here all week.
Going back decades, Rick. Well, I was in my native New Zealand. I'm a very proud Kiwi. I was in the restaurant business. Started working in a restaurant, then ended up with 3 of my own restaurants. Decided to sell those and do what a lot of Kiwis do, is move to Australia. So at the time, I'd been to Australia a few times, and one city I'd never been to, which was getting a lot of publicity at the time because the America's Cup was on, was in Perth. So I moved to Perth. I'd never been there before, didn't know anyone that lived there. I thought, well, let's have a start in a city that we know no one. So that's what happened. And looking around, we decided to look for a job until we really found what we wanted to do. So applied for a job to manage a small hotel in a country town in Western Australia. And because I had managed and had my own businesses in the past, my own restaurants, the company thought, well, this guy, he must know what he's talking about. So we'll put him in as manager. Not really general manager because it was so small, but that's effectively what it was. And I really liked it. I thought, my God, this is something I really enjoy. So this company had a few hotels around Western Australia, and after a few years, I got transferred around to different hotels, bigger ones, places like Kalgoorlie, which is a gold mining capital of Western Australia, Margaret River, which is the wine growing area of Western Australia, which is a very nice nice area to be. I then got they expanded to the eastern states of Australia, and then they sent me over there, and so I worked in Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, and then to New Zealand. And while I was in Sydney, the company was bought by Accor, the big French operator. So by default, I ended up working for Accor. They then sent me to Auckland to open the first Accor hotel in New Zealand. Which was a rebrand. And then I went back to Melbourne. I was there for a couple of years, and then I had the opportunity to transfer up to Asia. So 30 years ago, in fact, this year, I was transferred to Thailand. And started working for this interesting hotel in Thailand. That could be another story, but I'd like to tell you about that story. And then moving around Southeast Asia a little bit in countries like Indonesia, Cambodia, Singapore, then up to China. So when I was in China, I moved around some different cities, secondary cities, and then I jumped ship to IHG, and I got working with IHG, and I opened an Intercontinental Hotel in a city called Chongqing, which is one of the biggest cities of the world that very few people have ever heard of. It's got about 35 million people there in the city. Wow. And then I got headhunted for the job of GM of Caravel Hotel. Came down, had a look. Very fascinating. Learned about the history of the hotel. Really liked Vietnam. I'd been here on holiday some years earlier, so I was a little bit familiar. And I'd always had this inkling to work in Vietnam. I don't know why. I just always in the back of my mind. That's one country I'd like to go and work in. So, long story short, took the job. and GM there for 9 years. And then my boss, the general director, retired, and I took his job as general director for the final 6 years. So I was there for actually 15 and a half years to the day.
Oh.
It was just during COVID, I felt that I really would like to have another challenge before I hung up my boots.
Yeah.
So I was talking to a colleague of mine, a friend of mine in the same in hotels, and he was also thinking about setting up something different. We got together and we set up Optimum Hospitality together. So yeah, that's where we are. And straight after COVID, basically we set the company up. I moved out of the Caravel straight after the lockdown and moved just up the road from your office. And we got going. So that's really, in a nutshell, how it all happened. So we've been going for 3 years, just over 3 years, as Optimum Hospitality. My original partner had to exit the company for his own personal reasons, and another partner was brought in who was a good asset to the company with his knowledge and his experience. Norbert Vass, he's based in Jakarta, but is in Vietnam for 50% of the time. So, yeah. And so we run Optimum Hospitality. So we're a hotel consulting company and white label management company, ostensibly. And most of the contracts that we've got so far are for consulting purposes, for all sorts of things, assisting independent owners open their hotel. Many Vietnamese business people have another business, but they always have had an inkling to have a hotel as part of their investment. And so, that's where we come in, and we will help, we will support, and we will open the hotel for them. Now, we can go on to manage that hotel for them if they want, or we will find them a general manager and they can just control it themselves. And then other things that we do, we consult in terms of operational standards. We will lift standards of hotels, and that's been a large part of the contracts that we've had so far. But it's growing, and we seem to be not advertising very much, but we seem to be able to, just through contacts and talking to people, and leads come in, and we follow them up, and that's where it goes.
Okay. So what do you like best about what you're doing at the moment?
I like the travel, and I like working on new projects. Working in one hotel like the Caravel Hotel, iconic hotel as it is, great hotel to work in, very interesting place where it's located in the city. I witnessed many things, but the ability to travel around the country and work on projects in different cities is very interesting, with different owners all of the time. It's good to be stable in one hotel for a long time, but then it gets a bit sort of mundane, So, working on different projects, I really enjoy that. And anything from 3-star to 5-star, small boutique hotels. We have a project up in Sapa. It's a small 45 key hotel, which is a really cute hotel, really smart, Indochine style, overlooking the big valley and up to the mountains. We have project on Condau. We have projects in Longhai and Phu Quoc. So it's all over the country.
Wow. So all over the country, you have this experience from all around the region, working with 2 massive global brands, and now working with an independent, operator, as it were. Yeah. What trends are you seeing?
Yeah, trends that we're seeing. Well, certainly with AI, that's something that's coming into hospitality now. And I think a lot of people are still trying to work out how they can best use AI to the advantage of their operation. I guess all businesses are like that to some extent. How can we use it? So that's starting to come in the form of chatbots, in the form of check-ins, just assisting guests, that sort of thing. That's where I see it going. But also in I personally haven't used it, but I believe in many of the larger operators are using it in revenue management, predicting occupancies, forecasting those sorts of things, trends. That's a big change. And we also seen diversification in guests coming into Vietnam. There's a strong push now for the Indian market, which has potential. Huge potential to really boost tourism in Vietnam, and also the expansion of direct flights to different cities around the world by Vietnam Airlines and Vietjet, and I wish there were a few more airlines actually to bring more people in, but because it's we need it. We can't just rely on just a few cities in the region and one or two around the world. So yeah, we're seeing trends like that. We see a huge development in hotels and resorts around the country. They're getting to be more, shall we say, luxury 5-star hotels in the country everywhere. I mean, when I first came here, and you certainly will remember, you were twice as long as I've been here. When there was only 3 or 4 5-star hotels in Saigon, and now what do we see? You need many hands to count them all. And high quality hotels too. All of the big brands are coming. And I think when you look at different parts of the world, Europe's pretty flat in terms of tourism. US is a bit flat as well in terms of tourism. And I think Asia is, it's the place where there's huge potential growth. And so big operators, they see this opportunity, and developers see the opportunity to jump in the hospitality bandwagon.
Okay, so they're the trends you've been seeing. What's your vision for the future then? What's your prediction?
Look, in Vietnam, I see tourism really, really taking off. And if we look at the region, Thailand is the leader of tourism in this region, in Southeast Asia. And it has been for many years because they recognized tourism to be a major plank in their economy for decades. And they've really taken advantage of that, and they've done it very, very well. I think Vietnam is going to not maybe catch up to Thailand, but there's certainly the growth here is really going to be strong in years to come. With more infrastructure going in, there's more airports being built, as you know. The Long Tan Airport and other airports are expanding. We see highways going in, and then there's of course the fast train that's being talked about. I know that's a few years away, but I think it's the infrastructure that's going into the country is going to be a big boost to tourism. And the talk of a combined visa for the Indochine sort of countries, Thailand, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, the governments of those countries are talking about having one visa entry, like Europe. That's a game changer, especially for Vietnam. When people decide on coming to this part of the world for a holiday, and they look at Thailand, they can go to Thailand straight away, get through, they don't have to apply for a visa on arrival. They go to other countries, it's the same thing. Coming to Vietnam, okay, we've got to apply for a visa. Not all countries, but most countries have to apply for a visa. Oh, how much is it going to cost? Okay. Oh, no, too hard. Let's go to Thailand, So that's one of the impediments to growth in past years here. So I see that easing up, and I see that being a real, as I said, a game changer for this country.
Okay, all right. Now, you've had your longest chunk of your career has been in hotels. As you've shared, it's in the last 3-4 years, you've started off independently as Optimum Hospitality. What are some of the obstacles or pitfalls that you've faced making that switch?
Look, Rick, moving out of a hotel, I've lived in 4- and 5-star hotels for over 35 years,
Yeah.
right? So living in the hotels, in the general manager's apartment, everything's at your fingertips, right? You've got housekeeping, you've got engineering when something goes wrong, you've got all the F&B, something goes wrong with your laptop, you've got the IT manager to come and help. All of these things are just a phone call away, all these supporting services. And so moving out into an apartment and then starting my own business with no staff and no support, that was a bit of a struggle for the first 6 months, I've got to say. So, but I'm used to it now, and I travel around the country quite a bit with my with my company, with my job, as we have contracts. And so very often I can go for months and only be in Saigon for 3 or 4 days. But when I am at home and I am not having meetings outside, I get up in the morning and I work in shorts and t-shirt, and I quite enjoy that, you know.
Don't have to play general manager
So I don't have to put a suit on and suit and tie, and So, but it's been, I think, the transition of going from living in a hotel, 5-star hotel situation, where I can do. I'm as a general manager. There's a fair bit of power that you can wield within the operation, and then not having anything, no support around me at all, was difficult at first.
Maybe there's some listeners who are thinking, "Yeah, welcome to the real world, John."
Look, I'm sure you're right.
You're doing your own laundry, you're hoovering as well.
Yes, exactly. No, but I mean, it's been really good, and it's I've enjoyed doing it because I haven't done it for so long.
Now, but your career in hotels, as general manager in many places. I mean, the fact that you just shared that, you spent 35 years in 4 or 5-star hotels, living in that luxury, shall we say, that for a lot of people, maybe not even some people, they've never even experienced a hotel like that. What advice would you give to someone who's listening to this? 35 years living in 4 or 5-star hotels, that's nice. What advice would you give to someone who wants to start off a career in hotels and be like you?
Yeah. You've got to have the passion for hospitality, and that's critical. Otherwise, you won't succeed at all. The advice is to really be very, very flexible. That's a very, very important aspect of your character. Be very open to new ideas, be open to shifting around, because it's a very transient industry. If you want to succeed in your career and step up the ladder. Other advice would be committed to always do your best to serve the guest and make them happy. And I know that applies to a lot of industries, not just hospitality, but just be very committed. And and when people start in the hospitality industry, I have to be very honest here. It's not a well-paying industry to start with, and it's not till you get up to sort of middle management, then senior management, when you start getting to have an income that it's it's quite good. And so therefore you've got to persevere. And it's unfortunate that when you first start in the industry, you work unsociable hours. When all your friends and family are having fun, you've got to be working. Friday, Saturday nights maybe, or whatever. So you've got to persevere through that sort of period, and just show that you're keen to learn, that you're committed, you have great attitude, and you work hard. And more senior people within the organisation will recognise that, and you'll get promoted. And also just having a smile and a great personality, and be able to talk to the guests, and that's and the ability to get on with people, because you have to be able to cooperate a lot with the other departments in the hotel. I always used to say that to my staff that managing a hotel or working in a hotel is like riding a bicycle. The chain on a bicycle, and all the different links on the chain are like the different departments in the hotel, and they've all got to work together like a chain to make the bicycle go forward, and that's very important. So cooperation. Not everyone is cooperative like that, but if they understand that concept, yes, they will do well.
So it's really a job for a people person, is it?
Oh, very much so. You have to be. Yeah, you have to be out there. Certainly one of the things I found coming to Caravel after working for IHG and Accor is that there's no head office to support you. So you have to be a very independent person, because we were competing against all the big boys, the Hyatts and the Intercontinentals and the Sofitels and all those guys that we were competing against. So I had to make a point of networking and going out to events and talking to people, because that was the only way that we could compete. Apart from normal marketing, that's the only way we could compete. With me and my senior staff, networking, getting to know people, going out, knocking on doors of companies. So you have to work a lot harder in an independent hotel to compete with the big operators of this world.
Okay, I'm curious then. Does that mean that someone like you, a GM of an independent hotel, is of a different caliber from the GM of one of those brands, given that you've been on both of them?
Yeah, I have. I think what helped me was I came from an entrepreneurial background back in my early days when I had my own restaurants. So therefore, I was used to and I enjoyed being my own boss. And I was very capable of not having to rely on head office for the support. In fact, even when I was working for the big operators, I preferred to not be in contact with the head office and not get the support, but just be almost independent. But we had to. I mean, there were things that we had to follow. But no, it's just my character. I like to be an independent person and not rely on those people. But know they're there if we need it. But yes, I think in answer to your question, I think you need to be a slightly different character to the normal hotel general manager to be managing an independent hotel.
So a little bit more entrepreneurial.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, and recognise the opportunities for marketing and sales to generate business, more so than relying on what the head office and the company are telling you to do.
So what would be your advice then? So again for some listeners, is maybe say, okay, we want to be like John, and they do their hard work, working their way up from the bottom in a hotel. It might be independent, but it might be a bigger chain. There might be more opportunity there. How do they pick up that entrepreneurial flair if they haven't had the opportunity of running a bunch of restaurants before they even went into the industry?
I guess, well, I think sometimes it's in you, right? To be an entrepreneur. It's in your blood, it's in your DNA. But also, I think if you work for the right people, and you have no choice sometimes, right? You might be lucky enough to work for a person who is rather an entrepreneurial person that can mentor you, right? And ask for advice, and just talking to people, mixing with people that are entrepreneurs. And I think that's why one of the reasons that I was an entrepreneur in my early days, my group of friends that I used to hang out with and associate with in my late teens and my 20s when I was living in New Zealand, all of them were successful business people in their own right. Some of them came from a family of entrepreneurs and came into the family business, and others just set up their own businesses and were successful. So I was surrounded by very entrepreneurial people that influenced me a lot in those days. I don't know what would have happened if I was in a situation where everyone worked for a company and went to work every day and came home and that was it. I'm not sure, but I was highly influenced, and I've often thought about that, how I became an entrepreneurial person, and I think that's why. Yeah.
So for someone sort of working their way up in the hotel industry, if they're not exposed to that through their family or through their friends, would working for an independent bring a little bit of that more entrepreneurialism in? Because they'd have someone like you running the independent who's entrepreneurial. They'd have a mentor.
That's very true. No, I think, usually when a person gets to the GM level, they are to some extent entrepreneurial. Otherwise, they wouldn't get to that level. So trying to get close to the general manager and maybe the senior managers within the hotel, I think that's the best way, and try and pick their brains as much as possible. That's what I would be doing. I want to find out more, look for opportunities. One of the things that I used to do when I was working for the chains, one thing they do every 2 or 3 years, they tend to move general managers on to other hotels. So I would strategically look at the offers that, the HR department would say, John, we'd like you to go to this hotel and take up the GM position. And I'd think to myself, well, if I go to that hotel, where would that lead me after? So maybe I might not take that because that's not going to lead me to where I want to be. So I would say, no, maybe not. I'll turn that one down. Or I find one, yes, I'll take that because I know that if I go there, that's going to take me to there afterwards. So I would always be looking one jump ahead as to which hotel I would accept. You can't, when the HR department in the company asks you to go to a hotel or seeks out whether you're interested, you can't turn them down too many times. But once or twice is okay.
So, but how do you know which hotel to go to?
I always looked for bigger hotels in good cities, ones that were going to be challenging, quality of the hotel, those sorts of things. So when as an example, I was, one of my first properties that I managed in China was in a city called Zhengzhou, Sofitel Zhengzhou. It was a fairly remote city, and then after 2 years, they offered me to go, a year and a half. They offered me to go to a city called Jinan, and manage the Sofitel in Jinan. Much bigger hotel, 49 stories with a revolving restaurant on the top. A decent sized hotel. Now I took that opportunity because I felt that hotel would lead me on to something much bigger in the future. As it turns out, it was after being at that hotel that I actually jumped ship to IHG. And that's when I ended up going to Chongqing to open the Intercontinental Chongqing, which was a marvelous hotel right in the centre of the city of as I said, 35 million people population city.
So the size of the hotel is sort of going up the ladder, is it?
Usually, not always. No, not always, because you can have very nice, stunning luxury hotels which are much smaller than that. Of course, I mean we can look at some here in Saigon that are smaller but high end, right? But if the size of the hotel does make a difference, if the brand is right, because all of these big operators have many brands, as you know. So you look at the brand, you look at the size of the hotel, you look at the facilities, you look at the city where it is, and the technical difficulty or challenge to manage that hotel will set you up very nicely, if you do a good job, somewhere else later.
Okay. Now, going back to the very first piece of advice that you gave, which is passion for hospitality. All right, you're from that industry, so you know exactly what it means. But maybe some of our listeners have no idea what that really means. Like, is it just being friendly, or is there something more to it?
Well, there's a bit more to it than just being friendly, Rick. It's having the satisfaction of being able to serve the guests, provide them the service that they expect and want, and they're happy with that. And you get a big buzz when guests are really happy with the service you've provided. Now, in my case as a general manager, I get a very big buzz when my staff have provided exceptional service to guests just out of their initiative or just their personality, and we get the feedback of how good that service has been. So I may not have personally provided the service, but I get the satisfaction that my team have provided that service. And we always make sure we celebrate that, we share that, we celebrate it within the team, and just to encourage other people. So the passion is about satisfaction of making other people happy.
Do you think that's in a person's DNA? It's an innate trait, or it's something that you can culture?
It's in people's DNA, but I think some cultures do it naturally. I think Vietnamese are very good and very warm people, and do have great hospitality, personality, and DNA. Not all, of course, but the experience I had in Caravel was we had some wonderful staff that just had this natural personality to serve and make people happy, and just have this warm personality that you need as well. I think Vietnamese people are very, it's just in their DNA.
Okay, so what about others who aren't Vietnamese? Is it a skill that somebody can learn?
Of course, you can learn to serve people and do it well and do it very professionally. But I think that passion is something that's in you. It's in your DNA. I really do. Yeah. I really believe
so
that.
maybe you got to be born with it.
I'm not sure that is. It's like attitude, Rick. Can you learn attitude, or are you born with it? Now, I've always said my whole career that you're either born with a positive attitude and the right attitude, or you're not. And it's very hard to learn positive attitude. Very difficult. You can have mentors that can show you the way, but can you actually learn positive attitude?
So let's talk about mentors. Okay, you've had a wonderful career. It hasn't finished yet. It's maybe only just starting again. But have you had any mentors or heroes on your journey?
Oh, a number actually, in different companies I worked for. Certainly I worked for Accor for many, many years, and there were people there, senior people that I greatly admired and I looked up to. I think when you first come to Asia, for example, from a Western country, is a big learning curve, huge learning curve. So I can recall in the early days really admiring and looking up to and without even talking to them as mentors, but I followed what they did, and I was maybe a silent, or they were silent mentors to me that they didn't know, but people that I really admired that I followed and I followed their example. I recall one in Accor, which a person by the name of Reggie Hsu, and he was head of Accor for Asia at the time, and unfortunately him and his wife and his family were swept away in the tsunami Yeah, and they were on holiday in Thailand, and it was so sad. He was a pillar of the industry in Asia at the time. Other people, yes. When I worked for IHG, there was one particular person who was heading up IHG in China at the time where I was working, an Australian person. I greatly admired the way he worked. It was extremely typically Australian, casual, laid back, but very professional. And I really liked that way, and I tried to imitate his style to some extent. He was very professional, very smart guy, but just he could relate to anyone. So I admired that. So people like that in my life that have come along and who have been my mentors to some extent. My early days when I started working in restaurants, I worked for a person that owned 3 restaurants at the time, and I ended up managing one of his restaurants before I had my own restaurants. I greatly admired the way he worked too, which is very similar, very professional, but very laid back, very smart, knew what he was doing, but could relate to everyone. And I just like that style of management.
I like how you sort of casually sort of say, yeah, I was working for someone else in a restaurant. And, right at the beginning of our conversation, you started off by owning 3 restaurants.
Yeah, I did.
I mean, did you just how did that happen? You don't just own 3 restaurants out of the blue, do you?
I was very lucky, yeah. It's about being in the right place at the right time very often in your life, correct? I worked for this small chain of restaurants. So I just told you that this person had 3 restaurants. I then had the opportunity when I was managing one of those to set up my own restaurant, small restaurant, very small, very small. I think the seating was about 45 or 50 or something, so very small. And I just had that entrepreneurial drive to do that. I always wanted it because I saw what he did, right? And I guess I was using him as an example of if he can do it, then I can do it, right? So I set it up, and that was my first restaurant. And then there were other opportunities came along, and I just duplicated it. Yeah, so it was interesting the way it worked, but it's a case of, as I said, be at the right place at the right time. Opportunities come up, so you take those opportunities. Yeah. So, yep.
Okay, that leads me to my next question. What does success mean to you?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. Success is, oh my God, it's certainly more than financial success. That's a given. It's having time to do the things you want. Success in your relationship, in your marriage, relationship, family. That's very important, because you can't do the things you want to do if you don't have that support and success in your relationships. And being able to enjoy life, to be able to travel to where you want to go, when you want to go, to some extent. Just having the freedom, I think. I think that's success. Sure, we all want to be millionaires and billionaires and everything else, but you can be a very unhappy millionaire or billionaire, right?
Do you want to be one?
Well, I think we all want to have a bit more money than we currently do. That would be nice. But no, as long as I have, my wife and I often say that, as long as we have enough money for where we live, for nice food on the table, a bottle of wine, to be able to go for a holiday, when we want, to have the freedom to do what we want. We've got a great circle of friends here to be able to associate with them when we want. We don't need much more, to be honest. Yeah.
Life's good.
We're not out to be making millions and millions of millions. We just want to be able to do what we want to do when we want to do it, and comfort.
It sounds like it is more about freedom, or freedom of choice.
Yes.
To do, and not really have too much of a financial constraint.
Yeah, for me that's success. Yeah.
Wonderful. So, would you like also to share with us some of your values, some of your life values?
Life values, yes. Being true and honest of who you are to your family and friends. Being very transparent to people, whether they be business clients or whether they be family or whether they be friends. Dedication to whether it be your job or friendships. Honesty is very high on my list. Not exaggerating or not trying to be someone you're not.
Mm-hmm.
Those sorts of values that I hold very dear, and I look for similar values in other people. We don't try and be who we're not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just honest, transparent, down to earth, unpretentious people. That's who we are. Myself and my wife, we have the very similar values.
Do you think that that's linked to this passion for hospitality?
I've never thought of it that way, but yes, I think it is. Yeah, I think you tend to learn to be a little bit humble, because you're talking to and you're mixing with and you're serving people from all walks of life, from all around the world, and you learn to be, shall we say, non-arrogant, because that comes across. People see that very easily. And so, we try to be who we are. Yes.
So to me, it's from your values, it's and that linkage to the passion for hospitality. It's being authentic. Okay, but your authenticity, the way that you're dedicated to what you're doing, love what you're doing, you're transparent about it, you're honest about it. So when you're interacting with other people, they're going to trust and believe in you.
I would like to think so.
Yeah. So, I know I can share. I've been in hotels before. I travel around the world where,
Yeah, sure.
I have a complaint or something goes wrong because, shit happens. You don't believe a single word that comes out of that person's mouth for their excuse of what has gone wrong. They won't tell you it's just gone wrong and they screwed up.
And well, in that situation, I've been in a number of those situations trying to explain to guests why something has gone wrong. And you're 100% correct. It is better to be absolutely honest with what the problem is and how it's gone wrong and what you're going to try to do to redeem that that issue and keep the guest happy. You don't always keep the guest happy, but at least if you're honest about how it happened, then at least for most people, they will accept it.
Yeah, I think that's enough. That's enough. So, what makes you smile, John?
A lot of things make me smile. I enjoy life. That's why I enjoy smiling, Rick. People make me smile. I enjoy talking to people. I enjoy talking to nice people who we can have a conversation with. I enjoy looking out the view from my apartment across to the city and seeing what's happening there. I love that view. I enjoy... There's many things in life I enjoy. I enjoy good food. That makes me smile. I enjoy good company. That makes me smile. I enjoy doing things together with my wife. That makes me smile because we do most things together. There's many things make me smile. I'm a very happy person, in fact.
That's great. Okay, so if you're such a happy person, what's your biggest pet peeve then?
Biggest pet peeve. Very good question. That is very biggest pet peeve. When people are dishonest to me, and I don't know at the time, but I might find out a bit later, or people exaggerate the truth to the point where that's unbelievable. I just don't like dishonesty. You just be honest, be upfront, please. Tell
fess
me.
up.
Yeah. So that's one of my biggest pet peeves. Apart from the the traffic in the city right now.
Okay, so if you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Vision for the future.
Mm.
Wouldn't we all want to have vision for the future, though?
Really? But if you, when you say vision of the future, tell me more about that.
Well, if you could just... Sometimes I think in any business, you really don't know if you're making the right decision.
Mm.
If you could have some vision of the outcome of that decision and the influence it's going to make on your business and other people, that would be pretty good.
Okay. Ooh, that's made me really curious then. Oh, that answer's made me very, very curious. So, what's been your biggest failure to date?
I wouldn't say failure, but in retrospect, things that in retrospect are things that I could have done better. Right? So there have been times where situations have happened in my career whereby I look back and I think, oh yeah, we resolved that issue, but it could have been done much better. Yeah. Trying to find examples of that, I'm not sure, but I know there are things that could have been handled better. I think when I first came to Asia, dealing with owners of Asian hotels, or dealing with Asian owners, I should say, is very different to dealing with owners of hotels in a Western country.
Okay.
There's a different look at it, a different thinking, a different
Really?
mentality. Yeah. And especially independent owners. So how we would handle that, or how I've handled that, I look back now on some projects, and I'm going back some years ago, how I've handled my relationship with owners. Sometimes I think, oh yeah, I could have, if I'd had more experience at the time in dealing with owners in this part of the world, the outcome of that situation would have been better. But it comes with experience, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure everything does. We know what to do better. Hindsight's 20/20, isn't
Yeah,
it?
sure, absolutely. Yeah.
Now, you mentioned earlier that you love traveling.
Yeah, I do. Love
Okay, so what's the most favorite trip you've ever taken?
it. Ooh. I think my first forays into Europe, I really enjoyed that. Because of my younger days coming from New Zealand, Europe was a long way away. And we tended not to go that far. So it wasn't until I got to be working in Asia that I actually got to Europe and got to travel around and got to see Italy, got to see a bit of France, got to see the UK and some of these other countries. And it's somewhere where I'd always wanted to go. And so, that was good. And one particular trip, my father was born in the UK, and he came to New Zealand when he was 10 years of age. And so my wife and I went back to the two towns, one the town where he was born in and the town where he moved to before they shifted to New Zealand. And knocking on the door of the house in Colchester, where he was born, and in the middle of winter, and I had a big coat on and knocked on the door and said, this guy came out and said, I told him that, my father was born in this house. Is it possible to come and have a look? That was a big risk on his part, right? Because I could be near to rob him. But he was very welcoming, and he let us come in, and we had a look around. We had a cup of tea, and he then told us he was in the diplomatic protection squad. So I think he was fairly safe. But that was moving on an emotional family side, which I really enjoyed, going back to see where my father came from. Yeah, so that was interesting. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. At the moment, what are you most excited about, and what's giving you even greater hope for the future?
I'm excited about where Vietnam is going in terms of the economy, and how not just our business, but many businesses are really going to take off in the next 5-10 years, whatever. I'm really excited about that. There's some good projects that we're starting to work on and negotiate and talk with owners about around the country, all around the country. And if these come off, and there's always a big if, right? When you're trying to negotiate with the contracts and projects.
And you don't have that superpower yet.
Yeah, that's right. No, we had a good meeting yesterday, actually, which I think will be an exciting project. But I think those sorts of things, that excites me about what's happening in this country. I fear a little bit about what's going to happen globally in the next 4 years. But we'll see. And hopefully that will be positive for Vietnam. It's a big question. But yeah, no, I'm excited about that. I think it's great what this country's going to go through and where everyone's going to go in the next few years.
Yeah, we're on the up and up, aren't we?
Yeah, I
Still.
think so. Yeah.
Okay, so that's us looking forward. Now, I want you to reflect back.
Okay.
And think of what's the most unusual experience you've ever had in business.
In business.
In business.
So as a general manager or
whatever, business. Not in your life, just in business.
So there was a few things that have happened. I've experienced a few, shall we say, national disasters in different countries that we've had to cope with. So I was managing a hotel in Australia during the pilot strike. It's something you may not have ever heard about, but in Australia, going back in the late 80s, all the pilots of all the airlines went on strike for about 9 months or so. And it was dramatic. It devastated the hotel industry, as you can imagine. So we had to deal with that. That was one. I was then, when I came to Asia and I shifted, I'd been in Thailand and I got a transfer to Indonesia, to Surabaya, to manage a hotel in Surabaya. On the plane, while I was in Thailand, the Asian financial crisis was hitting. And I was on the plane on my way to Surabaya in Indonesia, and I read the newspaper and it said, Indonesia's now just getting hit with a financial crisis. Oh, good.
Yay.
But while I was living in Indonesia, President Suharto went down, and I was living there, and there was riots all around the country and people were getting murdered, and it was devastating. And so we had to deal with that situation in the hotel we didn't know whether the rioters were going to come and smash our hotel like they did in many places in the country at the time.
Scary.
It was very scary. There were military control. There were tanks going around the city. There was many places were cut off with barbed wire, and it was a very scary time. And many of the expats just fled the country.
And you didn't.
And I did not. I stayed there to face it all. And then when I moved to China, and I was living in Jinan, managing the Sofitel Jinan at the time, SARS hit. Right, so it was just as bad as COVID. It was really devastating, and occupancy of the hotel went down to about 3%, and we were trying to cope, and we weren't allowed to take guests in, and all this sort of thing. It was. And then coming to Vietnam, and we all experienced COVID, and I can recall when COVID first hit, and there was lockdowns, and the world was turning to custard. People were saying, "Oh my God, we've never experienced this before. What's going on?" I said, "Well, I have. I was in China during the SARS, so it was very, very similar. It didn't last as long, but it was a very similar situation, you know. So those unusual, devastating times in these various countries, I've had to cope with those sorts of things. So that was challenging.
Okay. All right. There's another question then. That sounds pretty, very, very varied. Your varied experience has prepared you for all of this. So what's something about yourself that people misunderstand?
I'm a very shy person.
That's a surprise.
And I've overcome some of that. I don't like, for example, public speaking, that sort of thing. And I've struggled to overcome just talking to people in small talk over the years. And I know sometimes people mistake that shyness for aloofness. I've had that said before, you know, and I'm not. I'm just a bit shy to talk to people sometimes. I've got over that to some extent, but that has come through in my career, and it's not. I'm just shy. Naturally shy.
It is a bit of a surprise because at the end of it, we've been talking about passion for hospitality, everything you have to do as a general manager. You are clearly, been successful in your general management career, managing all these hotels across the entire region, and now running your own company. I don't think many of our listeners would have even suspected that you were even remotely shy.
And I've had to work on it very, very hard in my career. I really have, to overcome the shyness. And even now, as I said, getting up to give a public speech or I struggle. So yeah, I'm a naturally shy person, and people may not see that, but yes.
So listeners, shyness can be overcome. Okay,
yes.
and with work, you can portray yourself, or people will perceive you completely differently. Maybe more extroverted than you really are, because presumably you're on the more introverted side.
Yeah, I am naturally. I am. Yeah.
Exactly like me. It's true. I'm an introvert.
Okay. But yeah,
I'm an accountant. Come on.
And because of I guess my shyness, there's over the years there's been a lack of confidence in my ability to do something. But again, I've had to work on that and push myself.
Do you think that's made you get to where you are? Overcoming that?
Yeah, possibly, yes. Because I've had to work hard to overcome that. And I think, that has made me probably more determined to succeed and do stuff, get things done.
Cool, wonderful. So, John, would you like to share with us how listeners can get hold of you if they wanted to?
Okay, we have our website. And on LinkedIn, of course, that's the easiest way to get hold of us. So we can share those later on, I think. Yeah.
All right, and we'll share all of that in the show notes, folks. So don't worry about that. Now, before we close, what's one question that you wish I would have asked you, but I never did? And what would your answer be?
What do I do in my spare time?
What do you do in your spare time? What do you do to recharge? Do you have any spare time?
I spend a lot of time working. And that's just the nature of the business I've set up, and I've committed to make that successful, and so I do that. My wife and I get up early, 3 or 4 mornings a week. We go for long walks up around your cafe here around Sala. We do that on a regular basis. We like to travel, as I mentioned earlier. We like to experience F&B restaurants. We like, when we're on holiday, we like to do epic things.
Epic things?
Yes, like going for long hikes or doing something that's very, very different to, we don't just we're not sort of people would go to a resort and lie on the beach or lie around the pool all day. That's just not us. We like to do stuff. That's probably what I would have expected you to ask me.
Thanks for your answer. Okay, so that's the end of our episode, folks. Thank you all for joining. You want to find out more about John, look in the show notes, and we'll see you again next time. Thank you very, very much, John, for joining us today.
Thank you, Rick.